Department Q opens with body cam footage showing 3 police officers, DCI Carl Mork, DS Hardy, and Patrol Officer Anderson, entering a house where a murder has occurred. The victim has a knife lodged in his skull. As Carl directs Anderson to investigate other rooms, a masked gunman comes in and opens fire, shooting all 3 officers. The assault is so swift that none of them have time to react. Anderson dies, while Carl and Hardy survive, though both are severely injured. Before Carl loses consciousness, he catches a glimpse of the masked gunman staring directly at him before walking away. After months of medical treatment, Carl is on the mend, but Hardy is now paralyzed due to spinal damage. Carl is required to attend counseling sessions with Dr. Rachel Irving, though their conversations are strained. She finds Carl difficult, noting his superiority complex and inability to show vulnerability, which has damaged his relationship with his stepson Jasper, as well as his standing with colleagues. In a separate storyline, we meet prosecutor Merritt Lingard, who is attempting to convict a man named Graham Finch for his wife's death. Though the evidence against Finch appears solid, Merritt's impulsiveness undermines the case. She walked right into a trap, allowing Finch to empathize with the jury, convincing them that he's innocent. Carl eventually returns to the police precinct, eager to resume his work. However, he's excluded from the investigation into the shooting that left Hardy paralyzed and Anderson dead. Instead, Bruce, a contentious colleague, is assigned the case. Carl's superior, Moira, encourages him to ease back into work. It's evident that Carl is unpopular among the department. Meanwhile, Merritt and her team await the verdict in the Finch case. The jury finds Finch not guilty, delivering a major loss for Merritt. She exits the courthouse and takes a cab home. Due to the police's faltering public image, Moira is told to improve law enforcement's reputation. One solution offered is the creation of a new unit, Department Q, which would tackle cold cases. Though Moira initially resists, she is persuaded by the promise of substantial funding, and she appoints Carl as the head of the new department. He is given the basement of the precinct to operate from, and instructed to select his first case from a backlog of unsolved files. Carl explores his dusty, neglected office space, arranging it for use. At the same time, Merritt returns home. Her remote, lavish house is shared with her cognitively impaired brother William, who suffered a head injury in the past. A house nurse, Claire Marsh, cares for William in Merritt's frequent absences. Merritt worries that Claire is becoming too emotionally attached to William. Alone, Merritt tries to treat William normally, but it has no impact on his condition. Carl is assigned an assistant, Akram Salim, a Syrian refugee working in the police IT department. Akram handles cleaning and organizing files, helping Carl settle into his new role. Meanwhile, Merritt grows increasingly paranoid, having received anonymous threatening messages. She tells William they should go on a vacation. That vacation turns out to be a boat ride. During the trip, Merritt and William argue. After Merritt throws her phone into the river in frustration, William imitates her by tossing his cap into the water. He then tries to leap after it. When Merritt restrains him, he lashes out and hits her. She walks off, leaving him momentarily. After sorting through numerous files, Akram leaves one cold case file on Carl's desk, one that stands out. This is when the timeline twist is revealed. Merritt's story has been unfolding in the past, specifically 4 years earlier. Merritt disappeared without a trace during that boat ride with William, and was never found. The file Akram places before Carl is Merritt's missing person case. The episode ends with a shocking reveal. Merritt is alive, waking up in a crude, isolated containment cell, her appearance unkempt and worn, showing she has been held captive for years. Carl is reluctant to investigate Merritt's disappearance, convinced that she's already dead. Akram, however, strongly disagrees, citing his experiences with missing people in Syria, many of whom were presumed dead but later found alive. Their disagreement is interrupted when Moira drops by the office to check in. Although Carl is cold and antagonistic toward her involvement, Akram volunteers that Carl is considering Merritt's case, pushing it into motion. We shift to Merritt in captivity, now with a clearer view of her daily existence. She receives items through an air hatch and uses them to survive. She scribbles multiple names up on the wall and settles on a woman called Kirsty Atkins. Despite his hesitation, Carl begins reviewing Merritt's case, tracking down the former lead investigator, Fergus Dunbar. Carl quickly realizes the investigation was conducted poorly. He and Akram follow the most obvious lead, Merritt's brother, William Lingard, now institutionalized at Egley House, under the care of Dr. Fiona Wallace. When they attempt to question William, Wallace blocks their access, stating that William can no longer speak due to brain damage. Though the visit seems fruitless, Akram speaks to the receptionist, who mentions that William receives weekly visits from Claire Marsh, the former in-home nurse. Carl and Akram visit her. Claire initially denies any involvement, but once challenged, she admits she's been visiting William and shares her thoughts. She believes William didn't harm Merritt, and that Merritt loved him too much to have committed suicide. She also points out that if William had pushed her into the river, he would have jumped in too. Carl then receives a call from Jasper's school. Returning home, he finds Jasper having sex with a girl from school. Carl lashes out at him, but Jasper walks out, leaving Carl unable to finish his lecture. Later, Carl returns to therapy with Dr. Rachel Irving. The session is even less productive, but it's revealed that Carl may be developing feelings for Rachel, creating a layer of tension between them. Carl's real emotional outlet is Hardy, his now paralyzed partner. Carl visits him in the hospital, leaving Merritt's file for Hardy to review. Merritt is interrogated by her captors about her past with Christy Atkins, a drug addict Merritt had once prosecuted. Christy had claimed she could testify in Merritt's case against Graham Finch, insisting she knew his wife. Merritt had refused her help, thinking it was a lie. She breaks down, believing this guilt is why she's being held. But she soon realizes that Christy is not the reason she was taken. She stops the crying facade. Carl receives a visit from Stephen Burns, Merritt's old boss from the Judicial Department. Stephen expresses interest in Carl reopening the case, but Carl is suspicious. Something about Stephen feels off. Not long after, Moira pulls Carl aside, telling him to change his clothes. A surprise press conference is underway to announce the official launch of Department Q, with Carl as the face of the initiative. Moira gives the intro while Carl reads from a pre-written statement, which Merritt's captors also watch. Initially, things go smoothly, but when the press starts asking questions about the shooting, Carl begins to panic. His trauma surges to the surface. The sound and image of the masked gunman flood his memory. Hyperventilating, he cuts the press conference short and flees the room. Akram follows him and helps him regain control, calming him with breathing techniques. Meanwhile, back at Egley House, William sees Merritt's face on a news segment about the case. The sight sends him into a frenzy, and he runs away from the hospital, triggering a search effort. Merritt is being tortured by her captors, who increase the air pressure in her tank, something they do regularly, seemingly to keep her off balance. But now, with renewed public interest in her disappearance, their aggression seems heightened. Carl and Akram retrace Merritt and William's last known route, taking a boat along the same path the siblings once traveled. Trying to piece things together, Carl throws his cap into the water, just as William did on the day Merritt vanished. The wind carries the cap down to a quiet lower deck, and Carl suspects that Merritt may have gone down there, a secluded area where she could have easily been taken. Merritt doesn't appear in any of the surveillance footage from that part of the boat, only William does. Combined with the fact that the ferry tickets were bought that same morning, Carl and Akram start to believe that whoever took Merritt had been watching her for some time. Their investigation takes them to Emhor, the island where Merritt grew up. The local police chief, Cunningham, tells them that William was once an exceptionally bright child, until he suffered a serious brain injury during a robbery. The assailant, a boy named Harry Jennings, had broken into their house and attacked him. Carl and Akram then visit Jamie Lingard, Merritt and William's father. He still lives on the island and works as a fisherman. They find his house unlocked, which surprises them. After a brief look around, they run into Jamie himself. He tells them that Merritt had returned to the island once, despite having left it years ago. He believes she stole a valuable necklace from him, which belongs to her mother during that visit. It also becomes clear that Jamie was a shitty father, who didn't even try to look for William after Merritt disappeared. Wanting to cover all angles, Carl tasks Akram with tracking down William, a surprising move, since Carl usually prefers to work alone. Still, Akram gets to it right away. William, meanwhile, is wandering through the wilderness until he finds the house he and Merritt lived in before she went missing. It's now falling apart. Inside, he finds an old storage room where he once made detailed artwork. He retrieves a drawing and then lies down on the couch to rest, but is woken up by a group of junkies who now use the place as a hideout. They threaten him, and he quickly escapes. Rose approaches Carl, asking to join Department Q. She's been benched for 2 years after suffering a heart attack on the job, sidelined by Moira, and now wants a shot at real work again. Though Carl finds her annoying, he agrees to take her on temporarily, likely because she was once mentored by Hardy. Rose is eager to prove herself. As Rose snacks loudly nearby, Carl starts forming a new theory, that the case may have been mishandled from the start. He questions how Fergus Dunbar, an inexperienced investigator, ended up leading a case this complex. Carl tells Rose to dig into that and see what she finds. While Rose follows that lead, Carl has a tense exchange with Stephen Burns. Stephen denies any involvement in Merritt's disappearance, saying he gave her more chances than most. He repeats familiar sentiments, that Merritt was ambitious, always hungry for more, and tells Carl to go through his office to talk further. Akram returns to Merritt's old house and runs into the same group of junkies. Calm and skilled, he uses martial arts to scare them into talking. They tell him where William might have gone next, hinting that Akram's past might be more complicated than just IT. Carl and Akram regroup and head to Claire's place. After a bit of conversation, they spot William in the greenhouse, hiding. The detectives question him about Merritt. William shows them the drawings he recovered, one of a faceless man wearing a hat with a bird symbol, and another close-up of the bird symbol alone. He tells them he saw this man, both at their house and on the boat, the day Merritt disappeared. They bring William to Egley House, where Dr. Wallace watches over him closely. In a flashback, we see William and Merritt watching TV during a storm. William suddenly sees the faceless man outside the window and screams, but Merritt can't understand what startled him. Carl then visits Hardy, who has looked over the file and developed his own theories. Hardy believes Merritt may have simply run into the wrong person at the wrong time. He wants to help, but needs a computer to dig deeper. Carl sends Rose on assignment. She is to return to Emhor and speak with Cunningham again, using her charm to uncover more information. Carl doesn't hide the fact that he's choosing her cause. She's a woman. Before leaving, Rose reviews the bird symbol from William's drawings. She identifies it as a boobry, a shape-shifting creature from Scottish folklore. Coincidentally, she notices that boobry is also the name printed on the boat outside the Lingard house in Emhor, the one used during the robbery. A flashback reveals the moment Merritt was abducted on the boat. While trying to pick William's cap, she's distracted by a mysterious woman calling out to her. The momentary pause gives a man behind her the opportunity to slip a bag over her head and take her hostage. Merritt later wakes up inside a pressure chamber, where she's being held. She tries to intimidate her captors, warning them that her disappearance will draw national attention, but they seem uninterested in letting her go. In the present day, Carl checks in on Bruce about the ongoing investigation into the shooting that injured both him and Hardy. He immediately begins poking holes in their theories, that the shooter came in through the back or waited inside, explaining that bins blocked the back door, making that entry impossible without a lot of noise. CCTV footage also shows someone at McDonald's 25 minutes before the attack, hardly enough time to get into position. Carl suggests they may have overlooked something major. There might have been more than one assailant. One waiting inside the house for him and Hardy, the other acting as the getaway driver, the same one spotted at McDonald's. It lines up with the McDonald's bag found near the scene, right around the getaway car's tire, where an eyewitness, the victim's daughter, saw the masked man getting in. Meanwhile, Rose visits Hardy at the hospital. She talks to him about Carl's reasons for bringing her on board. Hardy reassures her. Carl wouldn't have taken her on unless he meant it. The words seem to land. Rose then heads to Mahor, as Carl instructed, tasked with speaking to Cunningham. Rose warms Cunningham up with flattery and curiosity, digging into the Jennings case and its connection to William. She learns Merritt returned for Jennings' funeral. Jennings died while trying to escape after the robbery, hinting at a deeper connection between them. Rose asks to visit the Jennings house. Cunningham agrees, on the condition that his son Colin accompanies her. On the way, Colin reveals that after Carl's last visit, he re-examined William's case. The crime scene photos were horrific. William's head had been bashed in by Jennings. Colin also noticed a tech photo from the room William was found in. Someone, likely Cunningham, had circled something on the floor, a necklace. Rose convinces him to send her a scanned copy. They find nothing at the house, and Rose heads home empty-handed. Carl comes home to find Victoria, his ex-lover, in the kitchen with Martin. After Martin steps out, Victoria brings up Jasper, who ran away after hearing a voicemail Carl left saying he's better off alone. Victoria insists Jasper will return, but Carl needs to change, and let Jasper know his behavior isn't about him. Later, Martin brings up the same topic under the guise of dinner. For the first time, Carl opens up. The only reason he's alive, he says, is because the bullet passed through Hardy's spine first, slowing it down just enough to spare him. The same shot that saved Carl is the one that left Hardy paralyzed. The guilt weighs on him. It humanizes Carl, even as he continues to push people away. Carl, Akram, and Rose go over the new revelations. The circled necklace in the photo is the same one Merritt took from her father. It belonged to her mother, Lila. Though it was listed on an insurance claim, Merritt came back for it the day of Jennings' funeral. Carl challenges Rose's theory about the bird in the boat. She admits she's unsure how it all fits. Merritt seemed to have no friends, no connections. They're still missing the bigger picture. While combing through Merritt's old prosecutor files, Akram finds a note that seems like a love message from someone signing only with an S. The team starts investigating. Their first stop is Merritt's former assistant, Sabrine Pereira, but she denies having anything to do with Merritt's personal life. However, she does mention a colleague Merritt once saw as a challenge, Liam Taylor. Carl meets Liam, who turns out to be someone he knows. After some pressing, Liam admits he had an affair with Merritt. It lasted for a month before she ended it. They met at the Prince's Garden Hotel, and she always paid. The affair took place a year before Merritt disappeared, eliminating Liam as a suspect. Merritt had also used an alias, Lila Graham, and had a card under that name. Carl promises to keep Liam's secret, and visits the hotel. The receptionist resists at first, but cracks under pressure. He confirms Merritt stayed in the same room 6 times in the 2 months before she vanished. The name Lila Graham appears in their system, but the last registered visitor wasn't her. It was a man named Sam Haig. When asked why Merritt thinks she's in captivity, Merritt guesses it's because of Sam Haig, another man she had an affair with, which she ended coldly. Her captors reveal that Sam died after she ended things with him, but they make it clear that's not the reason she was kidnapped. Carl and Akram visit the rock climbing center, where Sam Hague was a frequent visitor. The center's proprietors, Paul and Chloe Evans, shed light on Sam's personal life and his habits. According to them, Sam died during a solo rock climbing incident. Paul is surprised by the accident, but Chloe isn't, citing Sam's risk-taking nature. Outside of work, Sam spent most of his time climbing. He'd scale the crag regularly, usually once a week when it was quieter. Free soloing, it would take him 45 minutes or a bit longer to complete the climb. But the story has holes, and Akram is quick to point them out. Sam's equipment was found inside his locked car, and no keys were discovered at the crime scene or on his body. It suggests someone else may have been involved. What aren't they being told? A flashback reveals how Merritt and Sam first met. She confronts him for sniffing around her workplace after learning his editor at the Scottish Telegraph assigned him to cover her background in relation to Mhor. Sam digs into her past, particularly her secrecy around her family, hinting there's more beneath the surface. Merritt isn't fooled by his pretense. She knows Sam wasn't sent to write a puff piece. She accuses him of trying to investigate corruption at her workplace. Corruption, he suspects, is tied to organized crime. She's not wrong. Back in the present, Dr. Rachel stops by the Department Q office out of concern for Carl's health. She meets Rose, and the two help each other move a desk. During the process, Rachel learns more about Rose's OCD and PTSD, rooted in a past incident where she was a passenger in a pursuit that ended with a collision involving an elderly pedestrian. It's the source of her trauma and her deep reluctance to drive. Interestingly, Rachel has met Merritt before, briefly, at a party with her ex, who is also a lawyer. But she doesn't offer much more than that. After Rachel leaves, Rose FaceTimes with Hardy and shows him the caseboard they've been building. He recognizes the bird insignia. It's a cormorant, a detail he knows from his background as a fisherman. He asks Rose to send scans so he can dig deeper. Carl and Akram head to the Scottish Telegraph, where Sam worked as an investigative journalist. Carl tries to learn more about Sam by speaking with his former editor, but nothing stands out. On the way out, Carl is ambushed by a reporter named Dennis Piper, who asks if he feels guilty about Anderson's death, noting that Anderson's wife just gave birth. Carl loses his temper and shoves him, shouting, "It should have been me." Back at the precinct, Akram updates Moira on the case. She warns him about overstepping. The junkies he threatened at Merritt's old house reported him. She reminds him he's not a cop and needs to be careful. Carl visits Hardy in the hospital and learns that Hardy is starting to regain some feeling in his legs. Hardy has a theory. The alias Merritt used, her mother's name Lila Graham, is tied to a trust fund account in the Channel Islands Bank of Jersey. Lila's wealthy family cut ties after she married a fisherman. When Lila died, the trust passed to her children. Now, with Merritt missing, it's passed to William. The team regroups in the basement office to review the latest findings. After some banter between Carl and Hardy, they put the pieces together. William can't manage the account himself, so control would naturally fall to his legal guardian. That's when it clicks. Dr. Fiona Wallace made herself William's guardian, suggesting a calculated move driven by financial motive. Meanwhile, Moira visits Dr. Rachel to discuss Carl's violent outburst, which has now been plastered across headlines with the quote, "It should have been me." Moira expresses doubt that therapy is helping and suggests switching Carl to a different therapist, an idea Rachel supports. Carl and his team confront Wallace at Egley House. While Carl meets her in her office, Akram and Rose check on the patients. They find William sedated on a bed, along with several others, all drugged using the same strange mixture. It's clear now. Wallace has been sedating patients and siphoning their money. Carl threatens to expose her, which would destroy her reputation and likely land her in prison. Carl brings William to Claire, who willingly takes over as his guardian. Later, Rose presents a new lead. By going through Merritt's old receipts, she discovered that Merritt regularly visited a laundry well outside her usual path. Rose suspects there's something important about the place. For a moment, it seems Carl might praise her, but instead, he tells Akram to accompany her. It's the closest she's going to get to a good job. The pair visit the laundromat and meet the owner, Shirley Atkins, mother of Kirsty Atkins, the woman Merritt failed to help. Shirley shares that Merritt once came by to apologize, but lost her nerve at the last second. Hoping for more, Rose and Akram head to Pentland's prison to speak to Kirsty directly. She tells them she had once agreed to testify against Graham Finch after meeting his wife Andrea at a refugee camp. But Merritt stopped her. Under pressure from Stephen Burns, Kirsty was later stabbed by inmates, losing an eye. The trauma haunted her, and the guilt ultimately drove Merritt to call Sam and say, "Okay, I'll talk to you." We see a flashback scene addressing how Merritt started spilling information to Sam Hague. She believes someone inside the Crown offices tipped off Finch about the witness, almost getting Kirsty killed in the process. This has clearly ruffled feathers, and Sam warns Merritt that she might be under surveillance. It's at this point that Merritt indirectly admits to receiving threatening emails and texts. Sam cuts their chat short and tells her to find a better meeting spot next time, not the cemetery she frequents. In the present day, Carl and Akram stake out Finch's shipping business, Finch Overseas Shipping, with the hope of shaking something loose. After receiving a strange transmission, they visit Fergus Dunbar, the former lead detective on Merritt's disappearance. Fergus has been assaulted. Unknown attackers left him bruised and beaten, and Carl is convinced Finch is behind it. It's yet more proof that something deeply rotten is happening, with Finch clearly at the center of it. Back at the precinct, Carl is met by Moira and Bruce in the lobby. They've apparently made progress on the Leith Park shooting case. Using Carl's earlier input, they've identified a suspect. However, Carl needs to confirm the ID via a police lineup, something he postpones. Instead, he heads to the house where the attack took place to go over the crime scene again. There, he runs into Bruce's two officers, who agree with Carl's theory. There were two assailants, a shooter and a getaway driver. Carl continues to piece things together. In that episode 2 press conference, a reporter revealed that the victim found in the apartment, Archie Allen, was a police informant. But Anderson never named him, only claiming he was there for a routine wellness check after the man's daughter called, a detail Carl now believes is a lie. In fact, he suspects the daughter may not even exist. Archie's flat was also a regular stop on Anderson's route, which raises the possibility that Archie was being used as bait. Carl and Hardy weren't the intended targets. They may have simply walked into something meant for someone else. Carl also now knows Anderson graduated top of his class, yet at the scene, he acted oddly incompetent. That inconsistency is hard to ignore, and now the crew has something else to dig into. Inside her isolation tank, Merritt experiences another flashback, this time to a late-night meeting with Sam in a secluded hotel room. She had booked it under a pseudonym, as Sam previously advised her to find a more secure location. They discuss Stephen Burns and the influence he wields, but the conversation soon takes a more personal turn. Merritt flirts with him and wants to trust him, which leads to both of them stripping down to ensure neither is wearing a wire. Naked and vulnerable, the two end up having sex. In the present, Merritt uses this memory as fuel to masturbate inside the tank, an act that clearly irritates the older woman who's keeping her captive. At the station, Carl, Akram, and Rose sit down with Liam Taylor to dig further into his involvement with Graham Finch and his affair with Merritt. From their discussion, it becomes clear that Finch used his vast wealth and influence to manipulate the jury and key figures in the prosecution, likely including Stephen Burns. The trio suspect, Burns, was either bribed or blackmailed by Finch. Things take a dark turn in Carl's personal life when his teenage stepson Jasper is approached by an older man who threatens to release explicit videos of him. He tells Jasper to relay the threat to Carl, but Carl arrives at the shop just in time to sense something is wrong. He follows the man outside and beats him up beside a black SUV, which seems to be a setup. Carl realizes this man was sent by Finch to scare him off. The violent encounter is caught on multiple smartphones by onlookers and quickly goes viral. Later, Rose visits Hardy in the hospital to discuss Stephen Burns' ties to Finch. Hardy brings up a man named Ned Finkel. He was hit by a car driven by Julia Montgomery and lost both his legs 4 years ago. Julia claims she was forced off the road by another vehicle. Since there were no witnesses, it's her word against his. But Hardy drops a crucial detail. Julia's maiden name is Burns. She's Stephen Burns' daughter. This makes Hardy wonder if the whole event was orchestrated as a warning to Burns, possibly by Finch to get him to do his bidding. Meanwhile, Rose reviews CCTV footage of Carl's assault on the Predator. She confirms Carl was set up. The man deliberately moved toward the SUV where the crowd was thickest to ensure the beatdown would be caught on camera. They find footage of the man being picked up by another vehicle afterward and manage to get the license plate. Carl goes to his therapy session, only to find that Dr. Sonnenberg is back. He's furious that no one told him Rachel would no longer be handling his case, and it's clear his feelings toward her have grown more complicated over time. Akram and Rose track down the driver who picked up the Predator. Akram tells Rose to hang back, then proceeds to push the man down a staircase. He follows it up by stepping on the man's broken leg until he gives up a name. The man confesses that the Predator was employed as a chauffeur for Ballantine Transfer and Security, a company owned by Finch Overseas Shipping, which, in turn, means Graham Finch is behind it all. Back at the precinct, Carl is getting chewed out by Moira, loudly enough for the entire office to hear. She's livid that he's now made 2 public scenes in less than a week. Still, she refuses to fire him. When Akram and Rose return, she scolds them too, dubbing them Team Doolally. They reveal that the chauffeur who threatened Jasper worked for one of Finch's companies. Bruce interrupts the meeting to say the police lineup is ready. Carl heads over, but after reviewing the suspects, he decides the man in the lineup is not the shooter from Leith Park, meaning the real attacker is still out there. Back inside the pressure tank, Merritt starts working on a possible escape plan. The airlock, it seems, is broken. Carl and Akram head to judicial headquarters to confront Stephen Burns. They present their recent findings from Kirsty Atkins' accounts, subtly pointing to a connection between Graham Finch and the prosecution office. Burns tries to dismiss their allegations, but the detectives persist. concluding that Finch likely coerced him through blackmail rather than bribery. The turning point comes when Burns references Kirsty's addiction, something Carl never mentioned. That slip gives him away. Still, the only person who can fully corroborate what they suspect is Merritt, if she's still alive. In her pressure chamber, Merritt experiences a flashback to her close relationship with Harry Jennings, the same boy who was later accused of inflicting a severe head injury on her brother William. Harry's brother Lyle knew about their friendship, even though he, like Merritt's dad, disapproved of it. After putting pressure on Stephen Burns, Carl and Akram decide it's time to confront the real puppet master, Graham Finch. They catch up to him at his golf course club. Thanks to Ed Solomon, the Predator's getaway driver Akram roughed up in the previous episode, they now possess incriminating messages showing coordinated efforts to have inmates attack Kirsty in prison. However, there's still no direct link to Finch. Interestingly, it was Sam Hague who told Robert Finch's lawyer about Kirsty just a day before the trial. He volunteered that information without asking for anything in return. But why? They don't have all the answers yet, but Finch's involvement seems undeniable. Back in the car, Carl tries to probe Akram's mysterious past in Syria, but Akram deflects without offering much detail. Just then, they receive an unexpected call from Dennis Piper, the Scottish Telegraph reporter whom Carl assaulted earlier in the season. Dennis sends over a video. The footage is an old interview of Sam Hague during his teenage years at a correctional school called Godhaven. In it, Sam describes an altercation with another boy who persistently stalked him, convinced they were brothers. Inside her pressure tank, Merritt discovers a painful tooth infection. Desperate for treatment, she asks her captors for antiseptics or dental assistance, neither of which are available on short notice. Instead, her captor provides her with pliers to pull her teeth out, a grim solution. Merritt uses the tool to extract the infected tooth herself. Exhausted and in pain, she collapses afterward, hallucinating a vision of her mother. Carl and Akram stop by a local pub to chat with Dennis. Dennis explains that he knew Sam personally before his death, and believes the video could be key to understanding what led to it, and how Sam is connected to Merritt. He also gives them the name of the interviewer in the video, Terry Dundee. Carl returns home for a long overdue talk with Jasper, his teenage stepson. In a rare moment of vulnerability, he opens up about the emotional toll of his job, the darkness he carries, and the pressure he faces. He tells Jasper it's okay to be angry, acknowledging that he has failed him in many ways as a parent. It's a touching moment. Jasper doesn't fully respond, but it's clear he admires Carl, even if he's not quite sure how to express it. Rose visits Hardy, who has just been discharged from the hospital and is back at home. They discuss the latest developments in the Sam Hague case. Rose voices her doubts about the account given by Paul Evans, the rock climbing instructor who supposedly found Sam's body after his accidental death. Hardy urges her to dig deeper by asking the right questions. Merritt receives her next batch of food inside the pressure tank. However, during the airlock exchange, she appears to be deep in thought, likely formulating an escape plan. Carl stops by Dr. Rachel's residence, determined to continue his therapy in her presence. She is surprised that he went as far as to track her down to continue their sessions. Rose follows up on Hardy's advice and visits the climbing center again to speak with Paul. While investigating the rock face alone, she's followed by Paul up the stairs. Their conversation becomes tense as she presses him for the truth. It turns out Sam once had a one-time sexual encounter with Paul's wife Chloe at a bar called the Spivey Inn. However, this contradicts the fact that Sam was said to be at the Prince's Garden Hotel with Merritt, causing further dilemmas for Rose and the team. In the meantime, Merritt puts her escape plan into motion. Using the same pliers from her tooth extraction, she damages the air pressure system, hammering pipes until the internal balance shifts. The result: the wheelchair-bound woman overseeing her is blasted backward and knocked out cold. Merritt seizes the opportunity, crawls from the chamber, and calls 999. Just as the call connects, a second assailant appears and knocks her unconscious. Carl raids a garage near Leith Park, confronting Caroline Kerr, the witness who previously redacted her statement about his shooting. He brings up her connection with Anderson and reveals what he's recently uncovered, that the local crime racket is run by a man named Eugene Arrington. Caroline's child, it turns out, is Eugene's. Meanwhile, Charlie, the man from the earlier police lineup, watches nervously from inside the garage. Carl later takes Charlie into custody. But when Charlie starts mocking him about Hardy's injury, Carl pulls the trigger and shoots him in the head. Except, it's a dream. Carl wakes up, disturbed, and jots the whole thing down on a notepad. He's confused about what it means. Merritt is dragged into the pressure chamber by the male captor who knocked her out earlier. He expresses some twisted form of love, removing part of his mask and appearing to lick her neck, though the act offers no clue to his identity. After the older woman, unfortunately still alive, instructs him to leave, he exits, taking Merritt's necklace with him. Carl watches Jasper and Martin practicing Tai Chi together. After their emotional breakthrough, Carl's relationship with Jasper has clearly improved. Jasper reveals that he's seeing a girl named Gemma, the same girl he was previously caught with. Carl awkwardly urges him to use protection, doing his best to parent, though it only embarrasses Jasper. At the same time, Merritt wakes in the tank and realizes her necklace is gone. She panics, frantically searching for it, but it's nowhere to be found. The older woman tells the male captor that watching Merritt die slowly will bring her peace, even if Merritt doesn't fully understand why she's being punished. Carl stops by a restaurant and runs into Dr. Rachel, who is clearly not expecting, or thrilled, to see him. She's waiting for a date, something that catches Carl off guard but doesn't stop him from teasing her. He's mainly there to ask what his dream might mean, though Rachel offers no real insight. Eventually, her date arrives. Carl leaves, pretending to be her brother, with a Scottish accent. While laying in bed, Merritt flashes back to a moment with Harry Jennings. She had told him she was tired of Emhor Island and wanted to leave, but couldn't afford to. She mentioned her mother's diamonds, which her father now kept hidden, a possible way out. Even after insisting Harry shouldn't do anything on her behalf, he did. The heist went forward, and the fallout left William permanently brain damaged. It destroyed their relationship. Harry died not long after. At the precinct, Carl, Akram, and Rose are still trying to make sense of the contradictions in Sam Haig's character. How could someone who seemed to help Merritt also hurt her? Merritt also has a vision of Sam. She remembers breaking up with him at the Prince's Garden Hotel, coldly. But in truth, she didn't leave. She told him to come with them for a boat ride. He refused. It was a small olive branch that he never took. Now in the present, Merritt softly says, "Sorry, Sam." The second captor is seemingly moved by her admission and rushes to the airlock to return her necklace, which surprises her. But the older woman remains unmoved. She tells Merritt that kindness won't change the outcome. She is still going to die, unless she can correctly answer one question. Why are you here? The team can't seem to figure out the link between Sam's death and Merritt's case until they realize the timeline is off. The night Sam supposedly slept with Chloe, he was also with Merritt at the hotel. That's impossible. Which means, ding ding ding, someone was impersonating Sam Haig. Merritt also reaches the same conclusion. After all the hints, the truth clicks. She's here because of Harry Jennings' death. Her captors are Harry's grieving family, his mother Ailsa, and his brother Lyle Jennings. The same Lyle who disapproved of her relationship with Harry, and who does happen to be Sam Haig 2.0. Carl and Akram head to Godhaven to meet Terry Dundee. Terry reveals that the real Sam Haig was a sociopath. He'd had an inappropriate relationship with a teacher and scammed numerous people. When he returned to Godhaven 4 years ago, claiming to be writing a book, he was really after one person. That person was Rocket, the nickname of Lyle Jennings. He's the one who stalked Sam at Godhaven, convinced they were brothers. The finale opens with a recorded interview at Godhaven, where it becomes clear that Lyle Jennings grew up in a severely abusive household. He describes a childhood marked not just by physical violence, but by prolonged psychological neglect. Their mother, Ailsa, subjected them to months of silent treatment and locked them inside a hyperbaric chamber as punishment. Lyle recounts this casually, as if it were normal. He says he and Harry deserved it for being ungrateful. The interview shifts focus to Sam Haig, and it's revealed that Lyle confused him with Harry because they looked alike, which is why Lyle kept following him. Fed up, eventually Sam attacked him. Carl, Rose, Hardy, and Akram try to trace Lyle's current whereabouts. There's no clear trail after he was transferred to the Enhanced Personality Disorder Unit at Rampton, but Rose discovers a lid. A man listed only as L. Jennings had been living across from Emhor 6 years ago and worked on the ferry. With no confirmation yet that it's Lyle, they await a driving license photo from the landlady to be sure. Hardy, however, reasons that if Lyle intended to kill Merritt, he would have done so already. Meanwhile, DCI Bruce is under pressure. Moira confronts him over the stalled Leith Park case, but Bruce talks about the victim's daughter being fake. Moira immediately deduces Carl gave him the info and threatens to take the case away from Bruce if he doesn't wrap it up quickly. John Cunningham, acting on a trace from Merritt's 999 call, visits Ailsa Jennings. She brushes it off, claiming she must have called by mistake. When John asks about a bruise on her face, she avoids the question and insists Lyle doesn't live there, says he's in Longueuil. But as John leaves, he replays the distress call in his car, studying the echo, and heads toward the abandoned part of the property. Inside the chamber, pressure and heat build dangerously. Merritt spots John through the window, but before he can act, Lyle appears. Their exchange reveals a long-standing secret. John once chased Harry to his death, only to realize later that the real culprit had been Lyle. Out of guilt, John didn't arrest him. When Merritt went missing, Lyle told him she'd fallen overboard and drowned. John chose to believe him to avoid stirring up more trouble. Now, Lyle offers John a way out, leave, and by the time he returns, Merritt will be dead, and Lyle and Ailsa gone. But John refuses to turn a blind eye again. Lyle savagely kills him with a hammer. This guy is a psycho. Carl questions William about the night he was attacked. He's convinced it wasn't Harry, who seemed like a decent kid, but Lyle. As William recalls, we see the truth. He struck Harry accidentally with a hockey stick during the break-in, but it was Lyle who brutally attacked him. Harry had tried to stop it. William, unable to face this truth, buried the memory. When shown Lyle's driver's license photo, William finally identifies him as the man he's been subconsciously trying to sketch, always with the hat. Also seeing Lyle on the boat that day was what made him panic and hit Merritt. Carl urges Moira to dispatch a Coast Guard to Emhor. On the way, Akram opens up about his past. His wife died after operating on the wrong person. As Lyle prepares to leave Merritt to die, shaving his beard and cleaning up, we get to see how Lyle stole Sam's identity. Sam had visited Lyle to make amends and to ask permission to write about Godhaven. Lyle questioned how Sam tracked him down. Sam explained how journalists gather information and even invited him climbing. Days later at the climbing center, Sam notices Lyle heading to the crag and follows him. But Lyle ambushes Sam. He beats him viciously, steals his bag and keys, takes him to edge of the cliff, rubs climbing chalk on Sam's hands, changes his shoes, and when Sam stirs, throws him off the cliff. Back in the present, Lyle and Ailsa begin shutting things down, except the chamber. Lyle tells Merritt the plastic is unbreakable. She asks why she'd want to. To kill yourself before you suffocate, he answers. He admits to beating William, but blames Merritt, saying she made Harry obsessed, and that guilt brought her back for Harry's funeral. No one gets away with anything, he says, and walks away. Rose and Hardy investigate Lyle's past. His juvenile record includes animal cruelty, stalking, and once being caught sleeping beside a schoolboy he'd been following. When Rose expresses pity for him, Hardy shuts it down. Lyle wasn't made this way. He was born wrong. His father died in a fire, likely caused by Lyle. Carl and Akram arrive at the Jennings property. Rose continues digging and uncovers more horror. After their dad died, Ailsa was committed to psychiatric care for 19 months. Lyle and Harry were left alone. Lyle was 15 at the time. He forced another boy into the chamber and raised the pressure, watching to see when he'd pass out. That's how he learned to use it on Merritt. The bird sigil that's been appearing is traced to Shorebird Ocean Systems. Hardy confirms they designed hyperbaric chambers. Carl and Akram locate the old Shorebird building. Inside, they find a hidden police car with the constable's body in the trunk. Carl powers on the monitors and sees Merritt, still alive in the chamber. But they don't know how to decompress the chamber without killing her. As they scramble, Lyle enters with a shotgun. Carl shields Akram and takes a shot to the arm. Merritt shouts from inside, distracting Lyle just long enough for Akram to throw a knife into his neck and wrestle the shotgun away, killing Lyle with a blast to the face. Carl manages to reduce the chamber pressure. As the Coast Guard helicopter arrives with Moira and William, Merritt is evacuated in a sealed hyperbaric stretcher. She and William reach for each other through the window, a moment of emotional closure. Meanwhile, Ailsa tries to escape via the ferry, but, blocked by police, she ends her own life. Later, Carl returns home to find Rachel in his house with Jasper and Martin, downplaying his injuries but clearly worn by the ordeal. Rachel gives him a tennis ball to rehab his arm. 3 months later, Merritt visits Moira to thank her for reopening the case. She says she's met everyone in Department Q, except Carl. Moira explains he's on leave. Merritt adds that she's taking William back to Emhor to reconnect with their father. As for Stephen Burns, he finds Carl waiting in his office. Carl brings up the Kirsty Adkins matter and tells Stephen he won't report him for colluding with Finch. As a father, he understands. But it comes with conditions. Carl demands a real budget for Department Q. He also wants Akram fast-tracked to DI, even though he's here on asylum. And one more thing. A new car, not Scarlet. Exactly like the Lord Advocate's. Merritt examines the investigation board before leaving. She passes Carl in the elevator without knowing who he is. Carl watches her go and returns to the office, where Rose and Akram join him to begin work on new cases. The final scene, Hardy, now on crutches, joining them. Moira stops him to hand over a new case, not for Carl and the team, but just for him. Hardy limps downstairs, shouting for Carl to help him. Carl turns and smiles. His friend can walk again,